To think that, in exchange for being born blind, I'd be blessed with abilities like these. The abilities of a devil host. This somewhat inconspicuous line by Morris and Black Clover is packed with a whole lot of implications the more you think about the topic. The implication is that there was some sort of a sacrifice or ritual for Morris's sight, as he says, in exchange for being born blind, and not because I was born blind. This makes me think that Morris was a part of a contract, or his own parents were devil worshippers. We know that the Diamond Kingdom is a terrible place to live. A person, family, or clan would do well if they were devil worshippers that borrowed power from the underworld. Which makes me think about another devil host in Black Clover, our favorite devil host, Asta. One time he sacrificed his arm in a devil's bargain for far more anti-magic power than he'd ever possessed prior. But what if that wasn't the only sacrifice that Asta has made? Maybe there was one that was made for him. What if the true reason that Asta has no magic, because, like Morris, it was sacrificed for the ability of becoming a high-quality devil host? This would actually be an amazing idea for the Black Clover story. Mana, or magic, is everything in the Black Clover world. Your reputation, job, and status is all based on how much mana you have and how skilled you are with using it. So essentially, Asta had the greatest sacrifice, giving up the most important aspect he had, mana, so that he would be able to wield the power of anti-magic. He gave up power so that he could destroy power. So in this theory, I want to discuss the possibilities that Asta's mana was sacrificed so he'd become a great devil host. Now before we end the video, please check out Arthur DeBurrow's merch store. I have a link below. He has a lot of great Black Clover merch, and that store will help support his and mine upcoming webtoon comic called Nine Fates. So please go check that out, get some merch, some good, high quality art and high quality merch. So before we get into the bread and butter of Asta's situation, I want to provide evidence that sacrifices can make someone a better devil host. Zenon was known as having the highest potential for being a devil host among the Dark Triad. His greatest of powers came from sacrifice, when he gave Beelzebub everything, his soul and his body, so that he could become a devil. Furthermore, in a recent Twitter space discussion with Jack Oates, Faith, J Cloud, and Gold Soul, we discussed on how the fourth Zagretes being in a wheelchair is further evidence in how sacrifices can make one a better devil host. It is implied by the fourth Zagretes that it is both Zenon and him that are the best devil hosts among the Zagretes siblings. The fourth cannot walk and moves around in a wheelchair. What if this is because he gave away his legs so that he could be in contract with a supreme devil? With Morris becoming a devil host so late, he was able to quickly use a higher power of Lucifero's magic, even though characters like Vanica took a long time to draw out, even only 70%. And now, we can circle back to Asta, who was born with no mana, or at least lost it shortly after he was born. But what if he has gone through multiple sacrifices? Lucita's curse, that absorbed mana and life energy, could have been a pillar of some sort of a ritual sacrifice. Her body taken away and feeding on Asta's magical power so that he'd be born with no magic. But this allowed him to one day wield the devil-possessed grimoire of anti-magic. He would do another sacrifice later in a devil's bargain, giving up an arm to Liba in exchange for a massive increase of anti-magic power. Now, I was hoping that at one point, that Asta would face off against Morris, and we'd get Asta to learn more about himself in that process, and Asta would say something in a mirrored fashion to what Morris said. To think that, in exchange for being born without mana, I'd be blessed with abilities like these. The abilities of a devil host. Then Asta would activate his anti-magic power, go ham on Morris, but sadly, Morris got jobbered in one of the worst handlings of a villain I have ever seen in fiction. But that does not mean that Asta has not gone through a similar situation to Morris. Remember that Lucita had some knowledge of devils. What if she was working with one and allowed herself to be cursed so she could create a devil host? This could be all a part of a God of Fate's plan, or even the Time Devil's plan. I'm going to tie this to another theory I have, and there's actually a lot of evidence that Asta was sent forward in time after he was initially dropped off at the church by Lucita. I made a whole video on the topic months ago, but the evidence for it is that when Lucita drops off Asta at the church, there's no ancient demon skeleton in the background,
But when Lucita drops Asta off at the front of the church, we get a view from the front of the church, looking at Lucita, and in the background, there is no ancient demon bones. They are not there. Whereas when you see this scene with Asta looking in the same direction, there are ancient demon bones. How can it be possible for the bones of the ancient demon to be present when Asta is 15 and then not be present when he was dropped off? The ancient demon was slain over 500 years ago, so that cannot be an explanation of just the different times. The only logical explanation here is that after Lucita dropped off Asta at the church, that a time spell activated around him and launched him far into the future. Remember, we do know that a time devil does exist in Black Clover, and in my previous theory, I postulated that the time devil is not an evil devil, and that he is working for the forces of good.
Which would imply that this was over 500 years ago, which means the events would be that Asta is dropped off at the church, Licht turns into a demon and is killed, and then Lucita finds the grimoire, and then Lucita saves Liba and raises him. The other evidence is that when the church isn't run down or shabby, when Lucita drops Asta off at the church, but when he is picked up by Father Orsi, which should be in the same day, the church is somehow run down, and now the demon skeleton is actually in the background. Even the tree in the area is shown to be different. When Asta is dropped to the church, the tree is full of life. When Asta is picked up by Father Orsi, the tree is dead. There's no leaves on the tree. That cannot happen in a single day, unless it was extreme circumstances. There is even more evidence, and that is that we know that after the events of Licht's deaths, for several years, Seker was asleep and could not guard the 5-leaf clover grimoire. But when she woke up, she watched it for 500 years. This means that there was a several-year period where she could not guard the grimoire, and naturally it would only make sense if that several-year period was when Lucita stumbled upon it directly after Seker fell asleep when turned into a bird. Or else, how did Lucita get the grimoire if Seker was guarding it? Why was Seker not there if Lucita had the grimoire? We have to remember that Lucifero is the strongest devil, and he is the devil of gravity. While you might think Astaroth's time magic would be more broken than gravity, we have to remember that gravity actually warps space and time. We saw half of this with Dante using Lucifero's gravity to warp space and teleport, but gravity can do the same thing, but with time. So you could argue that gravity would have a natural elemental advantage over time. So Lucifero would likely be able to use his gravity magic to cancel out any of Astaroth's time attack spells. So Astaroth would then be stuck with a long game here. He knows the past, present, and future, but he himself is not strong enough to go against Lucifero's gravity. But thus, he seeks to create a history where Lucifero is not manifested into the real world. So he has Lucita birth Asta, and then Astaroth sends him 500 years into the future, because he knows that this kid has a shot to stop Lucifero. Later on, Astaroth contracts with the eldest Zagretes sibling, Julius Zagretes, then convinces Marx to change Julius's memory so that he could overlook Asta, Yuno, William, and Yami in the Clover Kingdom. So yeah, we know that Morris explicitly states that when he was born, his sight was exchanged for the abilities of a devil host, and is a natural at using devil power. We have the other pieces of evidence for those who sacrificed our great devil hosts. So I don't think that Asta not having magic is simply because Lucita was cursed, and her curse stole Asta's power. I think it is a greater purpose than that. Lucita took part in a ritual. The ritual placed a curse upon her that manually stole Asta's magic in exchange for giving him the ability to be a great devil host. I think that when you pair this up with Asta as the son of a devil, or the son of a devil hybrid, and that's how he survived the womb, as devils are resistant to life energy attacks, this allowed him to be a different kind of a devil host with Liba, and leads all the way up to now. It could be that this is all a part of Astaroth's plan. He needed the Clefairy 3 to actually open, but not all the way, just so that Lucifero, like Megicula, would only be partially manifested, so he would not be at his full power. This could allow Asta to fight a weaker version of Lucifero, and allow him to actually defeat him in that partial state, allowing for Astaroth to become the king of the devils, and might actually make him the true villain of the story. Asta is a half or quarter devil human hybrid. This was needed so that he could wield a 5-leaf clover grimoire and survive the ritual. This is needed so that he could survive the ritual and wield a 5-leaf clover grimoire, which, remember, a 5-leaf clover grimoire is stated to be a grimoire meant for devils to wield. Yet the grimoire chose him, human, or devil. But he couldn't be born with that magic power advantage of a hybrid. He needed its sacrifice to become a talented devil host. But that served as a double purpose because he needed to be magicless to wield the anti-magic. I guess even a triple purpose because the lack of magic is what forced Asta to become a physical prodigy when it came to the strength, power, and speed of his muscles. If you want to get a bigger picture of this theory, I heavily suggest for you to watch these other theories of mine. Tetia being Liba's mother, that Asta time traveled theory, why Asta must die, and that Lucifero could just be a pawn, or the Astaroth time devil theory. These will kind of mesh together, even though they don't fit together perfectly because I think there's multiple ways the story could go, but if you watch all of them, you will understand kind of where the story might be going. So yeah, I think that this was a part of a plan for Asta to not have magic, and probably is the Time Devil's plan here. But anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts of this video and this theory down below. Do you think that Asta could have been part of a ritual sacrifice, sacrificing his mana so that he become a great devil host, and it was basically you needed a human-devil hybrid to host with an anti-magic power to be able to be strong enough to defeat Lucifero? Let me know your thoughts down below. Hope you guys did enjoy. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. Hope you have an amazing day. Plus...